In this video, I'll be breaking down how I shot a cinematic film for Sony using the Sony Alpha Cinema line FX3. I'll be showing you everything from pre-production all the way through to post-production, showing you how I came up with the brief, how I prepared for the shooting days, my filming process, how I organised all my files after the shoot, my editing process, which includes my colour grading, the SFX, the music, and the all-around post-production process. My name is Galliford, and I'm a 24-year-old travel filmmaker from the UK. I partner with Sony to test the cinema line camera FX3 and bring my vision to life. I started to brainstorm different ideas, but I quickly resonated with this idea I had about a daydreamer. The idea just came to me naturally when I was brainstorming and meditating on a concept. I wanted to combine the incredible ability of the camera with a concept that would inspire and connect like-minded people. I started to have a think about locations, and I quickly decided on Iceland, the land of fire and ice. So I started to build my pitch with a software called Canva, and within my pitch I included technical details, a timeline of my project, a mood board, and other things that are relevant to the project. My main goal was to create something that was a visual representation of a community of people, something that would inspire others, connect them together, and I knew the FX3 would be a perfect camera for this. The FX3 is a full-frame, compact camera, and it's ideal for solo creators. This camera shoots 4K 422 10-bit, which means that it captures a lot of detail, so when you come to grade it, you can get super creative. The camera has a dual ISO of 640 and 12,800, which means that in super dark conditions, you can still shoot and you can still preserve that quality and get super sharp footage. The camera is super lightweight and is also built to be weatherproof from raindrops. Also, not to mention the fact that the autofocus on this camera is absolutely insane. Now, we faced incredible conditions, really heavy rain, snow, hail, and the autofocus held up. It was completely reliable and didn't fail me once. The lenses used on this project were the Sony 35mm 1.4 G Master, the Sony 50mm 1.2 G Master, and the Sony 70-200 2.8 G Master. Now, the 35mm and the 50mm were perfect for this project as they're such fast lenses, and those extra stops of lights saved us when we were shooting at blue hour. The lens I used the most was the 35mm 1.4, and this was because it was the perfect focal length for the shots and the viewpoint I wanted to get. I used a telephoto the least because I wanted the audience to feel and connect with the film as if they were watching it for their own experience, and I felt the 35mm was the perfect lens for this. I did use my telephoto lens when I wanted to get some really detailed shots for the fast-paced segments, but if I had to pick one lens out of the three, it would be the 35mm. It's perfect for run and gun shooting, it performs incredibly well in low light, super sharp, compact, and also is super smooth. So for my natural Foley, I use the Sony ECM M1, and this just mounts to the hot shoe at the top of the camera. It's cable-free, which is super convenient. This meant that I recorded a lot of my sound when filming, so when it came to post-production, it was easier as it saved myself a lot of time. Most shots in this production were handheld, as recently I've come to really love the handheld look from footage. I think sometimes if things are all buttery smooth all the time, it causes a disconnect between the art and the viewer. Given that I wanted this piece to really resonate and connect with people, I felt that handheld was the best way to go. I did cut in a couple of gimbal shots that were smooth, so that these would contrast against the handheld shots and would stand out more. I specifically used the gimbal shots on the beach for the running footage, and we created a really buttery smooth slow-mo running scene which came out super nice. And again, I think this contrasts really nicely with the handheld stuff and makes it feel like a dreamlike sequence. Something to also mention is that I didn't have to use much stabilization in post-production, and this is because the stabilization in the FX3 already is insane, and that's just a dream for any filmmaker to work with. So the camera has two stabilization modes. You have active and standard. I would have standard on most of the time, and this is because I kind of wanted that handheld raw feel as mentioned before, and this mode was perfect for that. The active mode is perfect when you want to create smooth buttery shots that sort of resemble a gimbal kind of look. It's perfect because it's all built into the camera, again making it the perfect companion for travel content creators. The active mode does have a slight crop on the sensor, but again I think it makes it worth it when you don't have to take all of this other gear like a gimbal with you, and it's built into the camera. The autofocus on the FX3 is super reliable, and it has different modes that you can utilise. Something I used a lot was the face tracking mode, which I used on Alex to make sure that she was always in focus in the scene. Something I used a lot of the time was spot focus, where I'd want the foreground to be blurry but the background in focus, and these are just a couple of the techniques that you can play around with. But I'm not even joking when I say this has actually changed the game for me as a content creator. An effect I used a lot in this video was a slow shutter. Now, this is used as a transition or to change the pace in a video. The slow shutter is an effect that you can do in your camera by changing your shutter speed to below 1/13. The lower that you go, the more intense the effect is. So you can follow a subject with this, or you can just move your camera about, and this creates the effect that time seems to slow down. In terms of exposure, I was shooting in S-Log3, so I was always making sure I was exposed by +1.7, and this gave me the most room and the most space for when I came to grade. in post-production. So after each day of filming, I would do a backup of my cards and organise these through location and card number. I then imported all of my footage into DaVinci Resolve, which was organised by footage, SFX, music, assets and graphics. I then pulled all my footage into a timeline and started to make my selects with the footage that was going to be usable. And if you didn't know, this is by far the most convenient and efficient way to edit. Once I had all of my selects, I created my edit timeline and recorded a voiceover V1 so that would help with the pacing of the edit. I then began my edit by matching clips with specific parts of the voiceover. When shooting, I knew roughly what would go where, and I'd also imagined while shooting certain sequences of fast-paced bits, so when it came to editing, I kind of had a pre-plan for that. I then recorded the final voiceover with my Sony ECM S1 streaming microphone. I recorded my voiceover in GarageBand and applied some simple effects to help make my voiceover sound more cinematic. I began editing in DaVinci Resolve due to its color grading capabilities, and they do not disappoint. I built my node structure covering things such as white balance, exposure, contrast, whites and blacks, and then it got to the exciting and fun part in which I added in glow, halation to create that film look. I had a lot of fun within the grading, and this is definitely an area that I spent the longest within the post-production process. As mentioned before, the Foley that was baked into the clips on location was a really solid start for my sound design. I then used Artlist to add in extra things to build on the sound design. I used this for things such as whooshes and risers. I also got my music from Artlist, and I found this when I was cutting through my selects and I was just playing a playlist on Artlist, and I just waited for that moment where my brain just connected with a sound and I was like, right, I'm using this. Of course, whilst filming any project, you're going to face challenges along the way, and not everything's going to be plain sailing, and that's a part of the process. Whilst filming this project, we were faced with extreme weather conditions where it was hailing, snowing, raining so heavy, and things were kind of unpredictable. And this kind of taught me that you can never be too prepared for something. Something that did happen that was kind of a miracle moment was we arrived in Vic waiting to shoot the sunrise sequence, and whilst we were on the beach, a storm started and it was absolutely insane. It was raining, it was hailing, it was snowing, the wind was so strong. In that moment, although they were kind of scary and intense, the lighting and the conditions were insane, and this allowed me to get a shot that I genuinely think is one of the most incredible shots I've ever got. I want to mention Alex, who produced this project. She found the locations that matched the vision that I had and really made this thing come to life. So I want to give a big thank you to Alex. Without her, this wouldn't have been possible. She was also the talent and starred in the project, and she did a fantastic job. I also want to give a massive thank you to Sony, who believed in my vision for this project and support me on my journey. I truly think that Sony gear is changing the game for content creators, and a big thank you for them for the opportunity. My final thoughts on the FX3 are that it's an incredible camera. It's super versatile, it's lightweight and compact. It can also be rigged up for heavier productions if you want to have it as a B cam for the FX6. But again, if you're a travel content creator, I couldn't recommend something better than this. Thank you so much for watching. If you do have any more questions or something that I haven't covered, please leave it in the comments below, or send me a DM on Instagram at @LucyGalliford, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Finally, if you haven't watched Daydreamers yet, make sure you check it out and let me know your thoughts.